Hey guys, what's going on? Banana156 here with another video. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I do read all comments, so make sure to leave one. And if you dislike the video, feel free to dislike it. In this video will be the third installment of my series on fascism. In this video, we will be talking about why fascism always fails and why any future movements of fascism will fail as well. But yeah, if you want to see more fascist videos, make sure to leave a like. I have one more fascist video in the works that will be on different types of fascism. But yeah, so first of all, we went over what fascism was in the previous two parts. I used Umberto Eco's 14 points of fascism because I believe that is the best definition. So yeah, we went over those, so now let's go over why fascism fails. And why fascism fails is because of the characteristics of fascism. Fascism fails because of what it does. But yeah, so the main thing that makes fascist regimes and fascist movements fail is the lack of critical thinking involved with fascism, because a fascist regime would want to limit critical thinking as much as possible. That goes back to the point of, like, they want to use impoverished vocabulary, point 14, or like rejection of modernism in point 2. They want you to not they don't want to teach you terms that would be used to critique society, and they don't even want to teach you terms of what society is. They don't want you to understand basically anything about how anything works, because once you understand what different terms mean, then you can critique society. And once you begin to critique, you can start to realize all the problems within a fascist regime. So then you may lead a movement to rebel against them. That's why they don't do that. And if you don't understand what the terms mean, it also makes you easy to radicalize and make you scared of the terms. Like, they can make it seem different and scary. Like, back to point, where is it? Back to one of the points where it's fear of difference. They want you to be scared of different things, and if you don't understand what terms mean, it is very easy to make people scared of them. They also, another part of critical thinking is they want you to not be able to reflect. They want to limit any kind of thinking as possible, like reflection, introspection, any of those things. They don't want you to reflect on what anything means. They want you to take your orders and shut up. Like, a good example of this is like the 1776 Commission. They want you to be as mindlessly patriotic as possible, so you are easy to boss around and easy to radicalize towards being a member in their cult of death, and make you want to be a hero just for hero's sake and mindlessly die for your country. That's what they want. That's the main point of it. But why does that lead to fascist regimes failing? Because once you get they want to ingrain their ideology as much as possible. They don't want you thinking about anything else other than their ideology. That's why, like at the Nazi youth camps, they would just espouse Nazi propaganda into them constantly. And then once you become, like, why Nazi Germany failed and why other regimes failed is because they get too lost in their own ideology, and they don't know how to the people at the top don't know how to critically think anymore. Like, a good example at the Soviet Union was I think the scientist's name was Valyevov, he was a genetic scientist, and he was trying to figure out ways to make wheat grow in the cold in Russia, where it's cold and the ground is solid. And he was competing with another scientist for Stalin's approval, and Stalin went with the wrong one, and the one that said if you just soak the seeds in ice water, they'll be able to handle the cold Soviet climate. That's incorrect. You have to breed for correct traits and breed for several generations to get the correct traits to survive in that kind of climate. But Stalin went with the other guy because he was too lost in his own ideology and couldn't see the actual science. Fascism leads you to not be able to critically think, and it leads to you choosing the wrong option because you don't understand, and you pick the one that is the most parallel to your ideology. It's like a great quote from 1984. I know people overquote this book a lot, but in 1984, in one book Winston was reading, it said, in a fascist regime, 2 plus 2 equals 5, but come wartime, 2 plus 2 must equal 4. And not all the fascist regimes can't do that all the time. That's why the Nazi regime failed in World War II, because because of their calculations, they severely underestimated the rest of the powers in the world, and then they were immediately taken out by the Allies. Now, another thing that could lead to revolt is appeal to social frustrations. Fascists will always appeal to social frustrations. Like, that's why fascism is becoming so prevalent in America today, because we have terrible wealth inequality. There's just so many systemic issues for the fascists to play on, and they will always play on those, and then they will make promises, and then eventually they will never complete their promises, because it will just become a fascist dictatorship, and that could lead to more revolts happening because people finally realize. Now the main thing that makes fascism fail is rejection of everything modern. They reject Enlightenment ideals, they reject critically thinking, they reject introspection, they reject reflection, they reject all of these things that make countries today work. They lead people down a road of just being fearful for the sake of being fearful. They lead people to a place of action for action's sake. They want you to act without thinking. They want everyone to act without thinking, and that leads to members of the party who are higher up acting without thinking. That leads to the members of the party that are high up not being able to critically think themselves, and that makes them severely worse at tactician in war and tactician everywhere else. That's why the Soviet Union had starvation problems, because they didn't listen to the correct scientists. They chose the wrong one, the one who was more Soviet and more nationalist. They chose him instead of choosing the one that had correct science behind it. That is the problem, and that's why every fascist regime fails and will always fail. They reject everything great, and then they get lost. They get lost in their own ideology. They get too deep in their own ideology, and they start really believing it and believe that that is the only truth. Like, almost every fascist regime is guilty of this, and they always portray things like thinking as emasculation, so they won't do it. They won't think about anything deeply. Like, they won't reflect on what terms mean. They won't reflect on how society works. They won't reflect on how their government works. They won't reflect on anything, which leads to them not understanding how anything works, which leads to poor management of their government, poor management of their economy, poor management of the people, and then poor execution in wartime, because a fascist regime is always going to have a war. That's just how they are. And now, if a fascist regime does come to power through wars somehow, and they do have control, the last way fascism will fail is it will eat itself. With fascism, the main component of it is there always has to be an outgroup. Like in Nazi Germany, there was the Jews, the socialists, the Catholics, all these different groups that they put in concentration camps. There was all these groups that they were trying to genocide. Or in Israel, they're trying to genocide Palestinians. That's just how there's always an outgroup. Or like in China, they're trying to genocide the Uyghurs. There's always an outgroup somewhere. Eventually, they will genocide that entire outgroup. So who's next? Well, the Italians and Irish weren't considered white 100 years ago, so let's not consider them white now. Let's go genocide them. So what about after the Italians and the Irishmen? How about let's genocide people without blonde hair? Well, after we genocide all those people, who else can we genocide? Oh, let's genocide people without blue eyes. Let's genocide people who aren't tall enough. Let's genocide people who aren't athletic enough. Let's genocide all of these people. And eventually a fascist regime will genocide everyone available. Or a revolt will happen. Either or. And eventually the fascists will eat themselves, because a fascist regime always has to be angered at something. They always have to be scared of something. They always have to be in combatants to something. There always has to be someone coming in, and there has to always have to be some conspiracy. So there always has to be an outgroup to genocide. And once they genocide almost every group there can be, the fascist regime, there's no one there. There's no one left. And then the fascist regime fails because there's not enough people to hold up its economy. There's not enough people for their military, and if outside forces do exist, the outside forces will invade, and they will take control of the country and will liberate the people in there. So fascism will always, if fascism does make it to that state where it is a power, it will always eat itself. And we haven't seen a fascist state get to that point yet, because all of them aren't they'd never make it past the war stage, because their internal contradictions or their internal things cause them to fail before that. But yeah, we could see it with China. China could become that. The Soviet Union nearly became that, but I feel like it was destined to fail when it first came to be. But yeah, but the main point of why fascism fails is it's inherently against reality. They are always combating reality. And when you combat reality, you will lose every time. But yeah, thank you all for watching. That was the video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I do read all comments, so make sure to leave one. Yeah, dislike it if you disliked it. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys